Joe Biden, when he returned from Maui, had something to say about potential COVID shots.
Oh, man.
Vaccine shots for the future. Listen on up to this.
President, can you say anything about the uptick of COVID cases and the new variant?
Yes, I can. Matter of fact, I signed off this morning on a proposal we have to present to the Congress a request for additional funding for a new vaccine that is necessary, that works. And tentatively, not decided finally yet, tentatively it is recommended that, it would likely be recommended that everybody get it, no matter whether they got it before that.
Everybody.
So this is just like the Ukraine war funding. This is 100% straight up corruption, because the COVID, there is no emergency anymore. And just like Dr. Robert Malone predicted on our show over 2 years ago, the COVID virus has mutated to become way less deadly and way more contagious. Kind of like the flu, but a little different, as Bill Gates said. And it has a very low mortality rate. In fact, we just found out through Matt Orfala's video that they were claiming that COVID, the COVID-19 virus, the morbidity rate was 3.4%. That's what, and I kept saying, where are they getting these numbers from? We could never validate their numbers, right? And a lot of journalists or people who call themselves journalists would just repeat that number. And I remember I would tweet at these asswipe journalists, and I would say, you're not supposed to just repeat government propaganda uncritically. You're supposed to take those numbers as if they're lying about them and try to find out where the lie is, because they were lying about them, and it was never 3.4% death rate. The death rate was something like 0.0 something.
Yeah.
It was like nothing.
Yeah. Well, they also didn't even pay attention to the government propaganda. Every single person I see that gets it wrong on like other news channels, or supposedly not like the corporate news, there are different levels of like whatever the government said at the time. That's the last time they checked.
That's the last time they checked.
Looked into it since then.
Yeah.
So you get a different thing every goddamn time where they think, and now they're up to ironically going, well, you know, yeah, the vaccine didn't stop the virus, but it was good. But
nobody ever said it would. That's the new lie.
Yeah, but hospital beds, guys. Come on.
Hospital beds. Traffic lights. But they're just like traffic lights.
Seatbelts is what Sean Penn said.
This time we're going to make one that works.
But if you did the research, you'd always know that it will never work, because it's going to morph, it's going to change, it's like playing whack-a-mole, is what Dr. Ryan Cole told me. You can't have a vaccine for a coronavirus. No, like a flu shot, because it's always going to change.
That's exactly right. So I had virologists explain it to me that the reason why you can't get an effective vaccine for an airborne virus like that is because though they mutate too quickly. And so that's exactly what we saw happen all the way through corona lockdowns and stuff, is that they'd come out with the thing and it was to treat the last version of it. And the new version, they're like, we think it's going to protect. We would say, we hope it does. And Fauci would say, we have every reason to believe it will. Those aren't scientific terms.
No, I mean, and it was manipulation of data everywhere. I was watching an FDA approval hearing, and they were going over all this data, and then they made a vote. Then they had a vote, and all the 14 doctors voted yes to go along to recommend the shot. And then once they were done with the vote, then they started going over the data from Delta. So in other words, they were going over old data to make a recommendation for a new virus, for a new variant, and then talked about the data after they had already voted.
The data is a mutation behind?
Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
Yes. And so
we just got to speed up the process. That's all.
So the mentality, there's a group of people out there who love to be scared to death of COVID, and they're not letting go. And they're the people who still wear masks. They're the people who are still angry that Joe Biden isn't doing more to fight COVID. And they're the ones who pretend that somehow children are at risk from COVID, which they're not at all. No, healthy people aren't at risk from COVID. You know who's at risk from COVID? The same people who are at risk from COVID, who are at risk from the flu. Elderly people, you know, the average age of death with COVID is 82 years old. Well, the average life expectancy is 77. So apparently if you get COVID, you get 5 more years.
Exactly. But I think you hit it on the nose, Jimmy, because just like you're talking about what happened in Ukraine, this is a money laundering operation.
It's a money laundering
It's a money laundering operation once again. How many billionaires were made out of COVID?
That's right.
One every single day. Our friend Jay Bhattacharya, he put it up. How does the president know that the COVID vaccine works and that everybody needs it, whether you got it or not, he said.
How does he know?
Whatever their immune status is. Is there a secret randomized trial somewhere that only the FDA know about to prove this point?
Maybe. Or maybe
they're just keeping it from us.
This time we're only testing it on 4 mice, so that'll cut the time in half.
Literally, the last time they did was it the bivalent,
The bivalent
booster? They tested it on 8 mice, and of course, people don't know this because the people who are supposed to tell them this are being paid by Big Pharma not to tell them this, and so they don't know it.
Well, we assume it works because the other one works so well.
And
so
then,
why wouldn't this work?
I'll never get over that, how people just accept being lied to by Big Pharma and the government, and they're still not angry about it. People who attack me on social media all the time over my stance on COVID, they're not upset. I've never lied to them about COVID. The government and Big Pharma has lied to them about every part of COVID, and they still aren't upset about it.
You killed people.
My former comedian friends, they're still upset at people who question Big Pharma instead of being angry at Big Pharma.
Well, let's see if they get their new boosters that Joe's already prescribing. They're not going to mandate it, but they're going to recommend it. Then your punk ass company that you work for is going to mandate it to you, so they won't have to do a big mandate.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And it's just weird to see people who are supposed to be natural skeptics like comedians actually shaming people for asking questions about Big Pharma and government mandates.
What are you, just asking questions, guy?
And telling people to obey. That's what they're doing, right?
Yeah.
That's what.
Don't be these guys that are like, I'm just asking questions. That's a term I've read because I heard it a couple times. I was like, that's a really stupid thing to find. I got my friend's face.
Yep.
And it's a phrase going around. The just asking questions guy, as if
just not asking questions is the smart thing to do when you're giving a directive by the government and Big Pharma.
What do you mean? First of all, what do you mean just? I'm asking questions.
I'm asking questions
because I'd like an answer.
That's right.
And if it makes you look bad that you can't answer it, that's your fault.
That's right. Yeah, that's and the people who still want to wear masks and the people who want to mandate vaccines and stuff, they're the people who don't know anything about them. They don't care to know. They don't care to know that the death rate is as low as it is. They don't care to know that they were lied to about the vaccine stopping the pandemic and the transmission. They don't care.
Well, there's no vaccine for OCD.
My friend Graham is still angry at me for getting COVID right. He's still not angry at Big Pharma or Fauci or Collins or the corporate for yell at everybody, to lie to everybody about it. He'll never get it's weird to see people like that not getting angry at the establishment, but getting angry at people who question the establishment. It's the exact opposite of what comedians are supposed to do. And I talked about this on Ryan Long's podcast last weekend. And it's amazing to see comedians who are supposed to shame you for doing the opposite. If you don't want to get informed and you want to stay ignorant and following rules, that's what comedians are supposed to make fun of and lampoon and satirize. They're not supposed to. That's not supposed to make fun and shame people who are getting informed and who are questioning authority. That's what comedians are supposed to do, and they somehow twisted that, and it's the exact opposite. And you go watch their specials, go watch them in Hollywood Comedy Club. They're still doing that shit, and they'll never forgive it. And this is 100% grift. This is all just like but those same people are for the Ukraine war. Most of them, they have no you can't question the Ukraine war, or you're a Trumper. Do you see how convenient it is that, and no matter when you ask questions of the authorities, you're a bad person. You're a white supremacist. You're a conspiracy theory. You're a Trumper. You're a Putin puppet. You can never question authority. Well, you're supposed to question authority, and anybody who tells you not to is hiding something, or they've been propagandized.
Well, I think we also have to appreciate it for what it is. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you look at the mastermind, and people are getting their confirmation bias, but it's the ultimate weapon to split the people. What you do with your body affects me.
Yeah.
And then if you also put it in your body, think where your mental gymnastics going to go to kind of convince yourself that what you were spouting from Big Pharma is actually real. And also the fact, Jimmy, I think you guys know a lot of comedians that were just set to go on the road, and they were told, just take this vaccine, get everybody back on. As soon as we can all do this, we can all get back to normal. They beat people over the head. They just wanted to get back to their normal life, that they just said, you know what, I'll do anything at this point if we can just get back to normal.
Remember, if you got your vaccine, you didn't have to wear a mask. Remember that?
I remember that.
If you get your vaccine, you can go back to work. You can go back to going to restaurants, and you don't have to wear a mask anywhere. That's all over.
If they had made it a thing that if you got your vaccine, because I went and got it because I thought I was gonna get like special privileges in society. Like if I didn't take my shoes off at the airport ever again, you could administer it with your dick to me for the not having to take my goddamn shoes off.
Well, I got the TSA pre-check, so I don't have to take off my shoes anymore.
I got clear, but they got my retina, and I thought I was like
clear,
looking.
too.
I thought I was like looking into a video to watch it, and it scanned my retina.
Well, I got some great
So
news,
it got me
Pasta.
there.
That has never worked one time I've ever used
Ever,
it.
I always have to use my
Works every single
fingerprints.
time for me. But
They
the
never.
retina,
It never works with my
Never.
eyes. I
And
always.
then the
always
finger
works for
one
me. I don't know
Only
what it is.
sometimes
Sometimes you
works.
got to really push hard, and
the
it's
finger things.
What
Yeah.
eye mutation does Pasta have?
But really quickly, let's just talk about the two most important things when it comes to now this new information coming out by Biden. Number one, the money laundering part, right? So remember Thomas Massey? This is what he wrote this time. If you think Trump's CARE Act was a necessary and compassionate response to COVID, you're not going to be able to vote your way out of this mess.
That's right.
It was the bill of sale
Yes.
for the whole scam that
Yes.
followed. All the money that funneled into these billionaires' pockets,
That's right.
and the mainstream media going along with it, because they were also sponsored by Pfizer. Their paychecks came from Pfizer. That might have been the hard to see at the time, but it's obvious now because we remember what he put last time. Remember? The stimulus package that has just passed is the biggest wealth transfer from common folks to the super rich, Wall Street and bankers, in the history of mankind. This was the only guy, right?
Yep.
And he talked about it.
Well, he's the only elected politician nationally who was doing that.
Yes.
But we were certainly pushing back at this show, and we were one of the only ones. Every other lefty show was saying they have to do this because Bernie Sanders got unemployment insurance in the CARES Act. And those people are simps for Bernie Sanders, who's a fraud because he didn't get the unemployment in there. And even if he did, AOC called that crumbs anyway, which is what they gave workers so they could pass a $5 trillion upward transfer of wealth, the largest upward transfer of wealth in human history. And so thanks to Thomas Massey for being on it. We're trying to get him on the show, by the way.
We should reach out to him and have him on there. He's amazing too because he forced a, what was it called, a quadri or a quandrel? I forgot the
Quorum.
A quorum. Thank you so much. He forced
Quandrel, I call it.
I call it a
he forced them
quandrel.
to come together and sit down and speak about it, whatnot. And he said, done in the name of a virus with a 1,200 checks.
$1,200 checks.
Cheese in the trap.
That's
What's going
it.
to be the cheese in the trap this time? I don't even think they have cheese to put in the trap. They're just going to try to fear everybody into it. You know, and by the way, Jimmy and Kurt, last time it was very unclear where that money was going to. It was just kicking it to HHS. So they said of all this money coming in, and they're going to kick it to HHS and let that secretary decide where that money goes. That's also in a lot of the Medicare for All bills where it's not clear where the money's going. And then we found out where the money was going. It was incentives to put people on COVID protocols, get them on a ventilator, get a positive test. All those stories we heard where a guy had a motorcycle accident, was almost dead. By the time he came to the hospital, they gave him a test and they put down COVID as his death. Stuff like that because there was incentives in the CARES Act to get the hospitals to put people on COVID protocols.
That's right.
That's where the extra cheese came from.
And that's why you saw when we showed that video of the health department chair of Illinois said that if someone gets in a car accident and they have COVID, we're going to be counting them as a COVID death. Yeah, and then she just walks away.
Yeah.
Remember
That's
that?
right.
Yep.
There's like 3 of them where they just jet.
They just get the hell out of there. Yeah, okay, all right, I'll see you. Come see us live on tour. We're going to be in Toledo, Detroit, St. Louis, Tampa, Boca Raton, Orlando, Dallas, Houston, San Diego, Bloomington, Illinois. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for all those tickets.